blending doesn't always do it. And as you can see in the one we did earlier, you can go back to the cylinder we made a little earlier, that was kind of hard to work with. You may have found that as you were doing the exercise, it was hard to be scrubbing around like that, and it didn't always seem to work right. Well, there's one more tip that I'm going to give you and one more tool, and that's this opacity slider over here on the side. And the opacity slider will make a big difference in how you handle your art. And we rarely have it up here at 100%. We're going to have it usually down further up. But let's learn how to use it right so you can use it properly. So I'm going to go back to the gallery and make a new painting. Again, we'll use screen size. And go to your brush and make a pretty big brush here. I'm going to do a 23. And I'm going to go all the way over here on the far side, and I'm going to stroke down once and then twice. Okay. And that's at 100% opacity. Now I want you to take the opacity slider, and let's move it down to about 75%. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then once, and then twice. And you can see that it's a lighter shade. But you notice where over here, where I overlapped, I got a little darker color. Opacity works by taking colors, and as you overlay them, they get darker. Now I'm going to go take my opacity down even further, let's say to about 50%, like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do once and twice. And you can see that the opacity is still coming down. We're getting lighter and lighter colors. But if we were to go over that again, and I'm going to do that one more time. I'm going to go over this one right here. You can see what happens is it starts getting darker as we go. I'm going to undo that to keep with our gradients going this way. And we can build the gradients by our opacity. Again, I can go even further down. Let's go down to somewhere around 25%. I got 24. And then I can do the same thing again, once, twice. And now it's really, really light. You can see how much it's breaking down. And if you go even further, you're probably not even going to be able to see it. So, if I do 10%, for example, it's almost impossible to see. So we've got some sense of opacity here. I'm going to move this one back up to 60 something for the moment. And I can do the same thing with opacity with the blender. So I'm going to start again at 100%. And at the top of this, I'm just going to run my finger across and see what I get. Okay, and that's a blend at 100%. Then go again 75%. It's a lesser blend. And then 50%. Even lesser blend, you really can't even see it there. And if you go down to 25% like we did before, it's just near not even there. But if you were to go over them again, let's go back to, let's say, 50%. And if I do this a couple of times in a row, you can start to see that it's starting to do the blends. Okay, so it becomes harder to blend at those points, but you get more subtle blends if you're trying to do that. Same thing with the eraser. I'm going to go back up to here at 100%. And if I do 100% eraser, it just erases. Okay. If I go down here to 75%, let's do that again. And then try that. We get a little bit of a lighter eraser, and then 50%. Same deal. And it's working the same way we had before. And then you can start seeing we're not getting here. Now, the nice thing about an eraser is if I go to a high one and we're at a low stuff, if you got something you just want to lighten up a little bit, you can just lighten it up and just stroke a couple of times to get a nice controlled lightening of your darker colors. So you can use that as well. But I also will use this particularly to come up with multiple colors as I'm doing this so that I can say, I'm going to start maybe at like 50%, and then I can start making, for example, my spheres with a 50% so that I just need a couple of strokes or even 30% here. And now I've got my strokes on the outside like that. So let's go ahead and try that with an actual sphere and a cylinder to see how those would work. So I'm going to go ahead and go over to my gallery again, and I'm going to make a new canvas as we've done before. And I'm going to put in here, I'm going to go back down to maybe 14%, and I'm going to go to 50% here. And I'm going to start by putting a circle over here, and I'm going to put a rectangle over here, and then we'll put a little bit of a oval on top and a little bit of an oval on the bottom, okay? And we'll do the same thing we've done before, but now with the 50%, I can stroke a couple of times to say I've got dark, and stroke a couple of times to say I got dark for my cylinder and my sphere. And then I can start to blend those out a bit if I want to. And again, I've got my blend down a bit, so I'm going to do it like 80% maybe. And now I'm getting the blend here that I want. And I can get a blend like that, but I can also go back into the brush here or the eraser and start erasing that so that I have more color. And let's do some brush work with a lower color, let's say a 38 in here. So we have some color, and then we'll blend that out on the sphere here. And I've lost some of my sphere, so I'm going to go put that back in with a darker color. So bring up the opacity here, and now I can bring up my sphere's opacity against that cylinder that's behind it. And I can start blending those in. And then we just do the same thing we've been doing, is start blending things in. And I'm going to up my opacity for blending so that I have a better blend, and start moving it up. I can use an eraser on that one, blend that. And I may want a little bit more eraser, so I'm going to actually make this eraser at 43. And that's still a little too big, so I'm going to undo that. I'm going to make it down. Let's go to 30. You can see that I can get more control of my color here as I do this. And now it's a little bit better control-wise, so that you can get more colors and more control of those brushes and blenders and erasers. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. We'll get the cylinder behind it now cleaned up a bit. So I'm going to go to a cylinder, and I'm going to erase on the top here. Oh, that's too big, so let's bring us down. And then I'm going to just start doing a little erasing on the top of the cylinder so that we have some light on the top of the cylinder. And I'll now blend that in. And I've got a pretty strong blend here, so it should blend quickly, like that. And then I'll take the eraser again, and I'll erase over here. And I'll bring my brush down an awful lot, and then just start layering in some light color here, so I don't get into too much trouble with the sphere below it. And I'm going to bring this up a bit and add in that color, and then blend that up. And I'm just doing vertical strokes because that makes more sense, because our gradient is going back and forth this way. And there we go, and I've got that done. And I'm going to strengthen this up, and I got some pretty heavy darks on the back side here, so I'm going to use a high opacity, and then I'm going to make a little higher opacity for the cast shadows here, which I'm going to have two cast shadows, which are from both the sphere and the cylinder. Then I will go to my blender. I'll bring the opacity down, maybe about 70% or so. And that gets me a nice blend here to get the whole shape like that. And you can see I'm starting to have a nice effect where I can get both of my objects in here. Now, I'm looking right now that you got to be careful. You can see this right here. If you look here, it looks like that sphere is actually floating. And so I'm going to need to be a little more careful, and I think I'm going to fix that by coming back over here and cleaning up that shading. So I'm going to do a little bit here, and it really shouldn't be past this point here. So I'm going to need a stronger eraser here. So I'll bring up opacity so that I get a stronger eraser, and then I'll take the blend tool and blend that. And I can go up a little more on my blend tool. And you can see you don't get, if you bring up the blend tool to a large number, you get a bigger smudge. So that's what we're going to do. And now you can start seeing that looks a lot better as far as what we're doing. So you've now taken care and seen how opacity works, where you would use it to make new colors or to make grays that would fit in between using just the black. And it helps with the blends and the erases in the same way that you can get lighter or darker blends and erases out of the same 3 tools and 1 color. So your challenge is to do several things. You try to make a few more balls, just like we've done before, but now play with the opacity to just make the ball by itself. You can try making the cylinder by itself, and try making a ball and cylinder like I did here. So try all of those, playing around with the opacity settings, and see what you can come up with. And you come up with a good one, again, send them to me at Steve Lipton on Twitter with the hashtag #ExploreProcreate, and tell you what a great job you've done. So don't forget to subscribe so you'll get all of our upcoming lessons. Our next one is one of the biggest myths that there ever has been about art, and you don't want to miss that episode or any other episodes. And check out the series webpage. You'll find a link for that in the description below.